Good morning, everyone. My name is Anirban Bhattacharyya, founder and CEO of Amplo Global Inc. On behalf of Inturi Global, Amplo Global, and Trinomics, I would like to thank all of you for joining today's webinar. Today, our topic is about preparing your business for a post-COVID-19 sustainable supply chain readiness. Team, we have over 300 participants today, and I would also like to inform that most of them are from the manufacturing world. Before I introduce to our panelists and speakers, I would like to set the objective of the session. I think it's critical for us to understand why we are doing this. So in a normal ecosystem, we create differentiated supply chain strategies, which interplays with process and technology. We all are in a situation now, it's very different from past. We therefore felt the need of the critical analysis through portrayal of the real value occurrences on the ground, and hence sharing of experiences through a webinar. So we have a full agenda today. I'm going to introduce to our panelists first. Today we have two more panelists besides me, Ms. Nidhi Sinha, Head of Digital Consulting, Inturi Global, and Mr. Prantik Chakraborty, Practice Director, Trinomics. Firstly, I would like to explain the format of the session. It will be pretty interactive. There will be a certain number of polls on your screen that the audiences will be answering, and we will publish the result of the poll immediately after the question is answered. For each question, you will get 60 seconds to answer. The main objective of having these poll questions is to provide the speakers with a cue for their respective speaking topics. So we will run the poll first, publish the result, and then the speaker will speak about the relevance of the topic. Our key topics today are globalization of supply chain post-COVID-19. That's our first topic. The second topic is strategies for post-COVID-19 era. There are subtopics as well on workforce and manufacturing and a few others. The next one would be managing supply chain complexity on Industry 4.0 and automation. And the last one would be COVID-19, a new reset, survive, revive, and thrive. We will also make sure that the polling happens in between these topics. And as I mentioned, you will have 60 seconds to answer and we'll publish the result. We will also cover some our value proposition on how we could help the larger ecosystem during this ongoing market situation. And then we will finish off with QA and key takeaways. Also make sure that your pop-up blocker is turned off. Sometimes when polling questions are seen in this, are being distributed, sometimes it gets blocked by your browser. And we also encourage you to raise your question in our chat window and do it whenever you feel like. And most of the, besides the panelists and the speakers, the attendees will be on mute. Our guest speakers today, I would like to introduce first Mr. Professor Chandan Chaudhary, Senior Associate Dean and Practice. Mr. Abraham Stephanos, Managing Director, Tata Steel Downstream Products Limited. Mr. Atanu Ray, Senior Vice President and CIO, Sun Pharma Limited. And Mr. Rajashekhar VV, Group CIO, ITC Limited. Our first speaker is Professor Chandan Chaudhary. I would like to introduce Professor Chaudhary first. Then I will post a polling question prior to Professor Chaudhary speaks. Then we will answer, and then I will hand over the microphone to him. Professor Chandan Chaudhary did his MS in mechanical engineering and has a double doctorate. He is also the executive director leading the Munjal Institute of Global Manufacturing and Punj Lloyd Institute for Infrastructure Management at Indian School of Business, Hyderabad. The two institutes set up with MIT as an associate partner. Professor Chandan Chaudhary is an independent director on the board of Uno Minda, an Indian automotive multinational, and IIM Sambalpur. Of course, before his academic career, he has been with Dossal Systems and also with IBM. So before I hand over to the microphone to Professor Chaudhary, I would like to launch the first poll question. You have 40 seconds to go. Twenty seconds to go. Okay, thank you, everyone. So I'm going to publish the result as well. Thank you, everyone, for attending the poll. So Professor Chaudhary, here is your cue, and please feel free to start your session. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let me go straight to the agenda. Now, agenda of my session is going to be, we'll discuss briefly about the impact of COVID-19 on the manufacturing ecosystem. That's going to be based on a recent research we have done. We'll make an attempt to understand how global is our supply chain, and we'll take specific examples from multiple industry sectors and sum up with key takeaways. We go to the next slide, and you will find it interesting that the study that we recently conducted, this was based on data collected over a period of 10 days, end of March. We wanted to understand what's going to happen with new customer orders, what's happening with raw material procurement. We wanted to understand what's happening with order fulfillment process. Are the companies having big challenge? The answer to all these questions was that 267 respondents who participated in the study, they stated that all these areas, they're going to have big problem. When it comes to productivity, companies just don't have the kind of infrastructure they need to ensure that they can carry out their work in a lockdown environment. And when it comes to reduction in workforce, in the end of March, it was just 43% companies said yes, they believe manpower would reduce. But this, when we repeated the study on 10th and 11th of April, this number went up to 73%. So 73% respondents feeling that there will be layoff, there will be a reduction in manpower. We go to the next slide. It's very interesting. We actually made an attempt to understand what's happening with companies' top line, bottom line, and cash. Well, top line, bottom line are very adversely impacted. Now, 89% of the respondents felt that cash is a problem. That was end of March. When we repeated the study on 10th and 11th of April, 100% of the companies, 100% of the respondents said that cash is a big problem. Now we move to the next slide. We wanted to understand, if you look at the current status of lockdown period, we wanted to know what's happening with infrastructure for work from home. 62% of the respondents said they had the infrastructure in place, but when you repeated the study on 10th and 11th of April, it went up, it improved. So 82% of the companies said that they have the infrastructure to work from home. But when it comes to innovation platform, whether companies have innovation platform to work from home, we wanted to understand, do they have platform for digital design, digital manufacturing, digital sharing of their product, leveraging augmented virtual reality with potential and consumer. At that point of time, 28% said yes, and 38% said partially. Now, these percentages have come down. People have realized they actually don't have the kind of platform they need for the purpose of remote innovation. We go to the next slide, which was related to indigenization. 90% of the companies said they believe indigenization will receive a boost. Now, this figure has went up to 100% when you repeated the study on 10th and 11th of April. Now we'll move on and we will make an attempt we will study what's happening sector-wise. Now let's straight away go to the next example, which is a specific example related to pharma sector. So if you look at the pharma sector, you will find APIs, the raw material. 70% of the raw materials come from China. Raw materials are converted into drug in India by Indian pharma companies. Final product is exported to Russia, European Union, UK, Africa, United States. So the supply chain of pharma is literally global. Now, when you move to the next example, we'll make an attempt. We go to the next slide and we will try to understand what is happening with automotive sector, specifically electric vehicle program. We know China accounts for 27% of India's automotive component imports. Now, let's look at how automobiles are manufactured in India. So the next slide actually gives you a good representative example. There could be one or two exceptions. So electric batteries are imported from China. Battery management system is imported from China. Electric motors are imported from China. Motor controller systems are imported from China. The body of the electric vehicle is imported from China. What we do in India is just assembling of electric vehicle, and that's not really make in India. We move to the next slide, and we will look at now an industry which is very strategic for our country. Textile industry employs directly, indirectly, more than 100 million people. It's a sector that receives very little support because it has got a very weak lobby. Now, damask is a decorative textile product. I recently visited a company called Tyagaraja Mills in Madurai. They import cotton from United States. Cotton is converted into yarn in India, and yarn is exported to Germany, where fabric is manufactured from the yarn. Fabric goes to Austria, where they do coloring and printing, and the final product, the damask, goes to Africa. So supply chain is literally global. We go to the next example, the next slide. If you look at our sector and overall, if we try to understand manufacturing and operations ecosystem, the three levers I believe are going to be very, very important. Post COVID-19, Industry 4.0 will be more relevant. Artificial intelligence, big data, machine learning, organizations will be able to leverage those technologies to make organizations more agile. A stronger customer centricity can be developed. Productivity can be enhanced through smart manufacturing facilities. More importantly, companies can actually conceive new business model through innovation by leveraging intelligent technologies. I think value chains would go through transformation by leveraging Industry 4.0. Two things which will be critical. One, digital value chain in a contactless world, and digital innovation platform. So I move to my next example, which is very interesting. It is from Ashok Leyland. They have converted their vehicles into connected vehicles. So when they sell the vehicles, they put the vehicles on road. They ensure that the digital twin is available within Ashok Leyland. The digital twin helps them to stay connected with their vehicle to provide better support to their customer. So the digital world, the virtual world makes the physical world better. I go to my last slide, which is actually the key takeaways. First of all, while social distancing will be key to control COVID-19, we need to accelerate the digital adoption to minimize societal loss, to minimize business loss. I'm having uh, a, a WebEx that's happening with 1,000 employees of an organization, single focus, 1,000 employees coming together, having a discussion for 2 hours, how to accelerate the digital adoption process. I think those companies which will accelerate their digital adoption process, which will understand the value of Industry 4.0, which will understand how Industry 4.0 technologies can transform value chain, will have competitive edge. Post COVID-19 era, I think digital continuity across value chain will be a key to survival. And I think this is the best time to reboot knowledge and leadership skill. So over to Akhil. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Chaudhary. So if you go to the next slide, yeah. I'm going to introduce.
Anirban, can you put your video on, please?
So I'm going to introduce Professor Mr. Stephanus. Mr. Stephanus is the Managing Director of Tata Steel Downstream Products Limited. He started his career with Indian Aluminum Company in 1984, where he held various positions in the smelter, extrusion, and the foil and packaging divisions. In 1997, he joined the senior leadership team of TSDPL, where he held the positions of Chief of Market Planning, Vice President, Chief Operating Officer, and Executive Director before being appointed as the Managing Director in 2014. I would like to start with a poll question before Mr. Stephanus starts his session. And here you go. You have 2 questions to answer in 60 seconds. Twenty seconds. Okay. I'm going to push for 5 more seconds since there are 2 questions. And I'm going to pause the poll here. I'm going to share the results. So Mr. Stephanus, you have 2 questions here and some of the cues here. So the session is yours. Thank you. You may start now.
Thank you very much, Anirban. It is interesting that Professor Chaudhary spoke about the supply chain in manufacturing, and when we talk about the strategy for people, then it's very important how we plan ahead. Obviously, this is first a major humanitarian crisis, after that an economic crisis, and it is going to change the way we work in subtle ways. I personally do not think it will be a dramatic change immediately. It's more like how 9/11 affected airport security systems, those type of changes that will happen. So if we can put my slide on, or rather go into the next slide. Yeah. So this
Mr. Abraham, I think there's a problem with your internet connection.
no,
You-
I'm able to.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we lost you
So
for a second.
can I continue?
Yes, you can, please. We can hear you.
So I really didn't see the poll results about the question number 2, but I will share our own experience that having a nerve center to manage COVID-19 crisis, the first big advantage that we got was we could get real-time information and real-time situation analysis, which typically we wouldn't have that type of information under normal circumstances. It was important because we had to do some business and leadership continuity planning. We were very much aware. Thank you. I got seen the results. It was we were very much aware that at any point in time, any person in the leadership group could be out of action, temporarily or permanently, and then there needs to be leadership continuity also planned. It was very critical for us because we are a company which is spread over 9 locations and another 6 selling points. What we want to carry forward with us is retain that real-time visibility, because there are certain channels which have already been established. An important area that we need to think about now is that strategy, which used to be about growth, sustainable competitive advantage, etc. Now resilience becomes a huge focus area. So how do we build resilience? How do we build agility? And in one of the forums that I was part of, the discussion was about, it's not the people who are able to predict, because very large companies have good enterprise management frameworks, risk management frameworks. Nobody predicted that something like this will happen. So you can improve your capability to predict, but what really matters is your capability to adapt. And for that, this sort of nerve center that will handle COVID-19 and maybe future there would be other crises. So it's really going to get integrated with the enterprise risk management. And that's where I think that the direction in which industry will be moving. If we move on to the next slide. Yeah. Professor Chaudhary already spoke about manufacturing, but basically what we are looking at is, for the current, we would practically be running with 4 quarters of cost, but only 3 quarters of revenue. This is against a situation where the basic demand would have dropped. We are expecting that the GDP would drop by 2 to 3%. So there is a situation of liquidity squeeze plus suppressed demand, because even if you are able to get cash back into the system, the demand is not going to be there. So most companies would, especially in the manufacturing area, would move into a survival or starvation mode and really look at zero-based costing, refocus spending. Couple of issues which are now peripheral, but it will become, say, frontline very soon, is that many companies who do a lot of outsourcing, they also have in-house capacity. So some of this outsourcing will come down because people are going to operate at lower levels. For companies which have large distribution or retail networks, the health of the distribution channels would be extremely important. quite a few industries, I've heard that many of the distributors are, going into a crisis mode. So these are some issues that industries will have to deal with. But in terms of opportunities, let me say that this is an opportunity for us to build resilience, relook at our enterprise risk management, and challenge assumptions about what is important. Relook at the cost structure. So I expect that there will be a greater push towards variabilization of costs. That means keep your fixed cost base low, improve manpower productivity. And I'll move to my final slide, which is on the workforce area. So if you can, yeah. So the question was, in short term, are we seeing restructuring or retrenchment? I think in the short term, we're not going to see retrenchment because there is a great deal of emotion attached to this whole crisis. But certainly we are going to see lower deployment, greater focus on hygiene, and in white collar jobs, definitely much greater virtual working. In the longer term, I think one of the good outcomes of this crisis is that we will have a greater focus of hygiene in the workplace. There would be greater focus on multi-skilling and rotation of roles so that manpower intensity can be lowered. And manpower intensity, not just from a cost point of view, but from a safety health point of view, because there's a lot of management complexity involved in having a lot of people on the shop floor. So companies would definitely look at simplifying some of these issues. And of course, most companies would build capabilities in virtual working. So I would say that there would be a major restructuring in white collar jobs, which I feel will get hit much more than the blue collar jobs. The nature of the job will change. So that's what I wanted to largely communicate. And thank you very much for this opportunity to be in this webinar. Over to you, Anirban.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stefanos. So if you go to the next slide. Thank you. So I'm going to introduce Mr. Atanu Roy, and then I will post a poll question. So Mr. Atanu has been with Sun Pharma for about 5 years. He specializes in IT strategy and conceptualizations of innovative technologies. He has also worked with Dr. Reddy's Laboratories in a similar leadership role as the Vice President and CIO, IT and Business Process Excellence for about 4 years. He also has about 10 years of experience with HP Services, where he has headed the supply chain practice, manufacturing and distribution industries, and industry consulting practice. So before I hand over the session to Mr. Roy, I would like to poll a question. So I'm going to choose supply chain complexity, and I'm going to launch 2 questions, and the time starts now. Forty seconds. Twenty seconds. Okay, I'm going to put just 10 more seconds because there are 2 questions. And I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, I'm going to publish the result. So Mr. Roy, I will publish the result for, hopefully you'll see this. So there are 2 questions, the first question result, and then I will also scroll down for the second question. So, Mr. Roy, if you are ready, then you can take the cue and get your session started. Thank you.
Good morning to all of you. I'll be speaking more from a pharma industry perspective. As we see the pharma industry, actually, is the demand impacted? Yes, demand is significantly impacted. Though for chronic therapies, people keep taking the medicines which they are prescribed, but new prescriptions are not happening. So doctors are not practicing, they are not seeing new patients, and patients are also not going to hospitals or doctors. So there is actually from a demand side, both in India and in countries like US for branded products, there is no new demand getting created. Yes, existing demand which is there, and the products which are there for that continues to happen. So there is going to be refill of prescriptions, but no new prescriptions would happen. That is from a demand side. From a supply side, there has been disruptions in terms of logistics, in terms of manufacturing, and the real work from home is actually coming to play. So we had actually a quick a thing which was moving around in WhatsApp, and it was quite interesting, which says that a few years from now, people ask that what led to digital transformation in your company, and the choices given are: was it the CEO who drove it? Was it the CTO, CIO who drove it? Or was it coronavirus? So people would select coronavirus because actually that is leading to adoption of multiple technologies which we would have not used that much. So for the people at office and working from home, movement has been reasonably seamless with VPN connections, VDI connections, all these different technologies which were always there. But what is happening is, for a significant amount of manufacturing workforce, we are seeing work which can happen from home, and actually manufacturing processes in pharma can continue. We can keep manufacturing our pills with minimal workforce in the plant. So going to that, where we see factory and automation, and what is the post-COVID, what will happen? So pharma industry is highly regulated, and when it is highly regulated, and it was actually a laggard in terms of adopting automation technology, which has changed in the last few years, more from a compliance and data integrity perspective. But with manufacturing execution systems and integration of technologies from the sensors and PLC SCADA systems to manufacturing execution system to the ERP layer, which has happened, which the original trigger point was to have more compliance and data integrity in a regulated industry. What has helped is, now because of this technology and because of virtualization, people can work from home and operate and approve manufacturing processes which people would have thought would have been unheard of. So we need minimal number of people in the shop floor to actually continue our manufacturing operations. So manufacturing execution systems has been a great advantage for the pharma industry, for companies who have implemented these technologies in the last few years. And the shop floor integration which connects, and the convergence of technologies where PLC SCADA systems to MES to ERP systems and to analytics, this connection with historian and all those things inbuilt into it has been very useful. So we are able to run, and quite a few companies who have invested in these technologies in the last few years to run factory remotely with minimal operators. So while initially few days we had a bit of getting used to, but now the factories have started running with less amount of, with almost the capacity which we used to normally have. The restrictions being mostly related to logistics, whether some of the raw materials are not coming or packing materials are not there, or we are not able to ship out at the same rate as we would have wanted to do. But one thing which is going to happen in future is there will be move towards more autonomous systems. So where even the operators need not be to that much extent, and there will be systems which would be talking to each other, and more of robotics in the shop floor, which will, and that is the direction where things might go. We have been able to do that in few areas. Again, the driver initially was more of compliance, more of so that in clean room or in where aseptic operations needs to be done, we wanted to get into more of robotics. But those things are now helping us in these scenarios, and I think that is going to continue. Yeah, if you can go to the previous slide. Yeah, the other dimension which is happening is intelligent sales and operation planning, and the ability to readjust and synchronize, because demand and supply, because the existing demand is no longer applicable and new demand patterns are happening, and can we readjust the entire supply, including the factories and suppliers, is very important. So a fast sales and operation planning solution is actually helping, and these sales and operation planning solutions which dynamically readjust demand with supply is as such integrated with high amount of analytics, which actually helps in these cases. So all the machine learning and artificial intelligence, these solutions come embedded with it. And I see going forward in post-COVID scenarios, this is going to be the norm, and it will help the companies. As such, in today's environment, this is helping fine-tune the resources to be used in the changing demand conditions. Yeah, if you can go to the next slide, please. Now, some of the things, and I touched upon this in the last slide, but the digital transformation journey which we had initiated, and many companies in the pharma industry had initiated, and the initial trigger was as such from a regulation and compliance standpoint, and to have data integrity and productivity. But we were connecting sensors, instruments to the enterprise systems through the MES layer, and there was automation of logbooks in the whole factories going on. That journey is continuing, and it will continue, which is helping currently to operate with minimal workforce in the plant. And this IT and OT integration, I think, is going to continue, which companies like us had already started. We had not been able to do it in all plants, but few of the plants we have been able to complete it. What I see is that this trend is going to continue now, because the plants where we had implemented this, we are getting the benefits of it. So, and I'm sure now people will do this more of a necessity rather than more of a luxury or more of an improvement initiative. This is now going to be a norm. And the other part where I see, and these all links to the industry 4.0 readiness, because these are the basic building blocks which will make the company industry 4.0. And there are various processes where the automation of processes had been happening, apart from those catered by the standard ERPs or other enterprise software, but still there are disconnected processes. And those disconnected processes had to be integrated so that there is more of interlocking of those and mistake proofing. So that, for example, the artwork might say that it needs to be changed, but that is not integrated with the supplier system, and the supplier continues sending packaging material with the previous artwork, and might be the dispatch happens with the previous artwork. So, which might be extremely important in a pharma industry. So those type of integration of processes become very important. And the other thing is what is happening in the pharma industry is now doctors need to practice and they are not able to practice because patients are not coming. So telemedicine, which was, or having a platform where virtually doctors can practice is something which people will adopt. Though none of the doctors are really very happy with it because they find it very difficult to prescribe without seeing the patient. But in this context, when patients can't visit and doctors don't want to go to their chambers, don't want to go to their clinics, the telemedicine platform is going to be used as a stopgap arrangement. But going forward, for second opinions, people will go for this telemedicine type of platform or virtual clinics. And medical reps doing detailing or talking about their products on through video conferencing is something which, again, the technology is available, but from a mindset, doctors would not be liking it. That is what the feedback we get. So people are more looking at webinars of doctors at a slightly large amount of large number of doctors, and that is how the detailing is going to happen. So there is going to be a change in the way the industry is going to work, and they might become the new normal going forward. So that is primarily what I wanted to share in this context. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roy. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So I'm going to hand over to Nidhi, the digital consulting head for Enturi Global. So Nidhi, all yours.
Thank you, Anirban. Good morning, everyone. We just heard from our industry experts. Prior to this, we have also done our own research on what CXOs are thinking on how to reimagine the supply chain to stay through this crisis. Everyone is thinking in 3 phases of recovery cycle. First, to sustain, then to be steady and stable, and thereafter move to taking bold decisions to grow. We have seen, as of now, the 3 moot points in their minds of the 3 phases, and they are: A, cash for us is now the king. Therefore, how to manage cash, assets, and materials. In next phase, how do we now bring our focus back to profit enhancement? And hence, how do we go back to growth, revenue, and market capitalization enhancement? We have worked on our proposition on how to help you traverse through these stages. In this context, let me also explain what we, the trio of Amplo Global, Enturi Consulting, and Trinomics Inc. together bring in to stitch your end-to-end success proposition and help you flourish post-COVID. Amplo Global will help you measure your readiness through maturity assessment, scoring, by leveraging its unique AI-led cloud platform, namely Amplify 4.0. At the same time, it will also help you adapt, change, and transform with Design Thinking 4.0 build. Enturi Consulting, a pioneering strategy consulting firm, it will help you design your journey by helping you in your roadmap, business case development, ROI calculations, innovation funneling, and chalking bespoke strategy for your firm. Trinomics Inc., with its several years of experience in supply chain implementation, will help you transform your supply chain by leveraging its predictive and analytical models for manufacturing and supply chain. It has a plethora of platforms, solutions, connectivity, and smart infrastructure, which will successfully help you implement a complete transformation journey. We deliver agile and design-led, lean, and repeatable strategy and implementation of digital supply chain through a proven methodology, which drives metering and monitoring of your key KPIs. Through platform enablement and business transformation, we also help you to run, change, and transform the business in this 4th revolution era. Our end goal is to empower your organization to run a profitable business while embracing cutting-edge technology. I would like to hand over to Prantik Chakraborty, Practice Director, Tridamics Inc., to facilitate the question and answers and discuss the key takeaways. Over to you, Prantik.
Okay, thank you, Nidhi. I hope I'm audible. And again, thanks for providing the context of how Amplo-Tridamics and Inturi has come together to be part of our customers' journey, for them to go back to the new normal. Of course, with our insights, our approach, the methodologies, and the solution that you summarized. At this point in time, I would like to appreciate the speakers, the moderators, and audience for an incredible session, really amazing. Very, very special thanks to the panelists for the content and insights they brought today to the table. We are hearing you, sir, and we are watching as COVID situation is evolving globally. We see a commonality of questions, concerns, and focus and strategies across customer in supply chain and the supply chain practitioners. We are working in North Atlantic, Europe, Asia Pacific, and we continue to watch out for you and keep sharing the data that we are gathering and innovations that's happening in the supply chain. So we will keep working with you. There are tons of questions coming in the Q&A in the chat, and we again see the commonality there. It's very difficult and challenging to put all the questions. So we have picked few questions, and we are going to ask those questions to the panelists in the order they have spoken today, and something which is relevant to their topic. So we'll really request you to keep within 2 minutes for your answers so that we can summarize, and then we can move on from here, right? So the first question will be for Professor Chaudhary. So Professor Chaudhary, again, a very strategic question coming to you. So due to this COVID-19 pandemic, we see a huge disruption happening in terms of supply chain across the industry segments, and true for domestic and global. How India is poised in this scenario? Can India tackle the supply chain disruptions? Or do you think these disruptions will push India to go for more Make in India venture? What's your take, sir?
Yeah, so the first of all, I think if India got to leverage, then companies got to start working now. When there is lockdown, people are not working in factories. This is the time to actually do the planning. Thinking about risk in the nodes of supply chain. So they need to look at both inbound and outbound logistics, various nodes in the supply chain, and review them and think of alternative options. And I think overall, Make in India has a big opportunity. Yeah, over to you.
Thank you, Professor Chaudhary. That's a great insight. Okay, now let's move on to Mr. Stefanos. Sir, there are quite a few questions coming your way. Again, I was struggling to summarize many very interesting perspectives. So there are three. The first one is, audience is asking, business a new supply chain model because the demand is going down to maybe run the factory at a 40% capacity when a pandemic situation hits like this. What can be, and then make sure that it's running for a month, there is enough cash flow. So what kind of supply chain building blocks is needed to sustain that kind of model, sir? Mr. Stefanos, sir, you might be on mute. Mr. Stefanos, we don't hear you. Sir, can you hear us? Akhil, can you check if Mr. Stefanos is still in the panel?
I think
Just checking. 1 second.
I think he has dropped off.
Did he drop off?
He had a hard stop at around 11, so
Okay.
maybe he might have dropped off.
No problem. So, Mr. Rajashekhar sir, then let's come to you. Again, quite a few interesting questions. We'll really appreciate if you can share your insights with us. I have three for you. Again, the first question is how to deal with an upcoming scenario where we cannot predict our demand. What kind of supply chain disruption will happen and how that will impact our service level. And then the related question is, if the demand doesn't go up, then how long companies will take to stable their cash flow? So that's kind of a related question. And the third one is also very interesting. We talked about Industry 4.0, robotics came up in your point. So do you think that Indian industry is now moving towards that kind of automation where they're ready for Industry 4.0? And the interesting part is there a culture shift that needs to happen? Are the companies ready for that kind of culture shift where man and robots will work side by side? Sir, your insights.
Yeah, interesting points. I think great questions. Yeah, to my mind, let me start from the last one. I guess that, and I feel the culture shift is already happening. The mindset has changed. People are going to now question going forward, why not new way, which happened now, rather than resetting back to the old ways. I hear conversations, at least in the industry, where they already questions being asked, or rather models being discussed, that let's have it as 30% of our workforce continue to do work from home, so that there is a resilience built into the business. Because mind you, again, at one point there seems to be an assumption that whatever we are going through now is only a one-off event. There's also a distinct possibility that this may not be one-off event and it is only a wave which can come later again at some point in time. And when it comes back, what do we do there? So that preparedness has to happen now in the survival phase. So to my mind, I think yes, the mindset has shifted. The culture has is amenable for a change, and it requires possibly institutional support from each organization to make it last and embedded in the way organization is to work, going forward. Now, coming back to the demand question, I think it's very fundamental. At this point in time, as we go through this crisis time, yes, of course, as I said, we are all optimistic. The demand has not got extinguished in a sense that, for many businesses, the demand is there, but due to the other macroeconomic and other conditions, it is muted. So as the recovery phase comes in and kicks in with stimulus, support from government, support from the other sectors, I do presume that some level of demand will come back. But the key question is what Mr. Stefanos talked about, is that do we have the capability to adapt and fulfill and seize the demand at this point in time? And that is premised on agility and flexibility of the organization, ability to harness its own resources to ensure that it services that demand better and faster and cheaper than anybody else. And that is what will make it stay and survive the crisis time. So to that extent, I think one needs to focus on, as Nidhi talked about, on the cash, focus on consumer, focus on customers, focus on our operations, use the data that you have, use the knowledge that you have about your business, your manpower assets, and your facilities optimally to come through successfully through this phase.
Okay, so if I may ask you one more question. So let's say the demand comes back maybe 50 or 70%. Do you think the industry and supply chain is building some buffer or thinking about some buffer to take care of that demand, which will kind of a pent-up demand which will kick up?
Yeah, that is definitely there. I think the demand is going to come back because, again, Indian economy that way is quite unique in the sense that market, we are not so dependent on overseas demand or demand in other countries. And also ours is a growing economy. Yeah, it may not be going to grow at 5-6%, but again, it is not neither contracting. So there is always a demand. So I'm giving a very general answer. Basically, it depends on business to business. But in a general way, one look at it, the demand is definitely muted. So the winners are going to be the ones who are going to be smart and service the demand in such a way that they are reimagining rethinking their supply chains today, so that which can withstand when the demand scales up, and then they can revive and grow and thrive.
Great.
So it all depends on the choices that one is going to make now in terms of supply chain configuration, in terms of sensing the demand, in terms of fulfilling it, the manner in which the demand is going to be fulfilled, and great customer relationships. I think number more again, the time now to be very close to the customer,
right? Be
with the customer, understand the customer's pain, and solve customers' problem today, and be ahead of solving their problems. So these are going back to the timeless principles of making sure that we have that sustainable business, right? Whatever it takes to build a sustainable business, that is what is required today. We really have to go to business 101 and then rethink the business and remove that inefficiencies, wastages, leakages that exist in the operation, that crept in the operations. Use data wisely to be that cost competitive and to be the efficiency leader in your own space, at least at this point in time. And then comes innovation.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So I'll hand over to Anirban at this point in time for a summary. But Anirban, great point from Mr. Rajashekar, the empathy with customer. I think that's going to be extremely critical. Over to you, Anirban, for the summary and closing up session.
Sure. Thank you, Prantik. So if you may go to the next slide. So before I go through the key takeaways, I really, first of all, thank you everyone for listening in, and especially the panelists and speakers to stay back a bit more. So we as a team, honestly, we are witnessing these type of challenges, of course, before COVID-19 era daily. And now during the era, our team is evaluating the pattern of issues, the trends, and we are continuously connecting the dots, right? We're trying to find a solution for all of us here as a trio, as a team, as a group. Now, if you really see these key takeaways, they are really rich, and I'm very excited about seeing how the outcome has come today. So automation is really the new normal. That's something that we're all talking. We are all seeing the cost-benefit analysis there. Value chain transformation through digital industry 4.0. Yes, this will be a short, medium, long term. Maybe this whole integration of things and Internet of Everything, as we are talking, with integration of things, including processes to enhance efficiency. So it's, of course, this is another good topic. Blockchain and supply chain. We have seen much more in fintech. Supply chain, blockchain, and manufacturing. Blockchain is becoming more relevant. And stay ahead of customer. So I always believe in this, that if I can connect the dots before our customers can connect the dots, that's the best thing could do. So what we will do is we will take all the questions, all the polls, results. We will consolidate this. We will distribute the presentation. So please make sure that if you have any more questions, if you go to the next slide, there's an email address that you can follow through with us. Can we go to the next slide, Akhil? Thank you so much. And we have our contact numbers and email addresses as well. So at the end, I really want to thank all our speakers, Professor Chaudhary, Mr. Abraham, Mr. Atanu, Mr. Rajashekar, our panelists, Nidhi Sinha and Prantik Chakraborty, our audiences, and really staying back a little bit more than an hour, and for participating in our session today. And really have a safe and a great week ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.